Hi, everybody. Coming at you from sunny Arizona. I think it's 80 degrees outside. Okay, I shouldn't rub that in. I do, though, want to talk to you for just a minute about your week 11. And I know this is already week 13, but I've been at a conference and all kinds of exciting and interesting things. And so I'm just now actually getting time to put together the grades for week 11. I want to talk to you about it. So first of all, I want to thank you because based on your responses for week 11, I realized that for next year when I teach this class, that I need to change up the question just a little bit. I've actually used this exact same week 11 question for several years running, but I've never had quite the response that I got from you guys. And I'm going to have to say, not in exactly the way I was hoping. So it's caused me to do a little more digging and also to change the instructions for next semester or for next year. So here's the thing. You all pulled down really interesting, if you can remember back 2 weeks, you all pulled down really interesting sustainability reports. The problem that I had, and this doesn't go to all of you, but it goes to some of you, was that you were not being particularly critical of the information that you found inside. And when I say critical, I don't mean criticizing. I mean critical in the academic sense where I expect you to look at them and, like say, is this valid? Have they got all the information there? Are they leaving something out? Now, some of you did. For example, I can't remember off the top of my head because I actually did the grading this morning and then I had to run off to a couple meetings. But somebody noted that the sustainability report set benchmarks for the organization and then didn't meet them. And that's the kind of critical thinking I am looking for. On the other hand, a lot of you looked at how easy it was to read these things and how visually appealing they were, how many pages long they were, and maybe made some comments about their claims, but nobody really doubted these claims. So here's how I'm changing it for next year. Basically, next year, I'm asking people to pull down these exact same sustainability reports, but then I'm going to also ask them now to Google the companies and look at the news and see whether or not the news about their environmental and sustainability behavior matches their lingo, because that's one way to figure out whether they are or are not whitewashing, greenwashing. So let's take IKEA. IKEA does and has made some real strides. And yet, if you think about it, IKEA is still a big box store. Now, what happens when you get a big box store? Especially, I don't know if you've noticed, but in most communities, there's just one IKEA. In fact, I confess, I went to IKEA last weekend and bought some bedroom furniture that I'm having delivered and put together because I am not that great at putting stuff together, and it's going to cost me through the nose to have somebody else do it. But regardless, my point is I had to drive about 40 minutes to get to the IKEA store. The IKEA store is one of a kind, and it is a magnet for people from all over this huge metropolitan area of Phoenix, where I live, that is the 6th largest city in the nation. Now, if you think about the amount of traffic that is getting pulled down into that Tempe, Arizona neighborhood, particularly probably on the weekends, there is a traffic and a commensurate pollution from car cost that goes with IKEA. And there's actually, when I Googled IKEA to find out how green they were, I found a couple of articles talking about like a traffic report. I can't remember which city, it might have been Philadelphia, where they ascertained that the incidence of lung diseases like asthma would raise somewhat, not a lot, but somewhat, including deaths associated. But then they balanced it off against the number of jobs that it would bring to the community, and they went ahead and approved, the city council approved it. So right or wrong, not judging. I'm happy to have an IKEA in their neighborhood. Not in my backyard. This is a NIMBY thing, I guess. I don't know. A lot of cities have actually attempted to fight big box stores, and this isn't strictly an IKEA thing. But when you look at IKEA's sustainability report, they don't really address this issue. What they address is their changes in packaging, their recycling of stuff that is left over from the way that they are producing and taking in, wrapping, storing, packaging stuff, and also their investment in a recycling plant. They're a minority holder in a recycling plant, which is good. It's kind of an offset activity, I guess. And their clear desire to make things that aren't necessarily throwaway, which is a change for them, because it used to be that they thought of what they did as cheap and throw away, so that, you know, you could get a chair here, and if you got tired of it in 5 years, you could toss it and get another chair here, more modern. So anyway, my point is they're doing some stuff, but they're not doing other stuff. So who else? Shell Oil. Somebody did Shell Oil. You know who you are. I don't remember because, again, I did this morning. Shell Oil talks a really good game about greening up. But if you do a little digging for the news, you would find in some of the business news outlets that they still are not particularly sustainable. They still plan on trying to drill in environmentally sensitive places like the Arctic, and if they can ever get it through, which they might be able to under the Trump administration and get permission, areas across North America. And I have given you a link for this in the notes beneath this video. And you will also find that Shell's move toward greening up is actually a move to diversify, because they realize that civilization, society, culture is moving away from petroleum-based energy and toward other things. So they're basically just trying, as the call for oil products goes down, they're trying to diversify their portfolio, and it's really not so much about greening up as it is about profitability. They are selling more of their oil to third world countries, and so forth, and they don't really think that the market's going to be impinged until 2030. But this is all very interesting because it puts a different light on their sustainability report, which doesn't really mention any of these things. Okay, so what about Coca-Cola? Well, bottling Coca-Cola is an incredibly water-intensive thing. I don't know if you've been paying any attention to the Nestle wars, but Nestle is basically going into cities in the desert, including Phoenix and some other places where they already have a water shortage, and putting in bottling plants to use water that they're going to actually then export out of these cities to other places in the form of bottled. Also, whenever you bottle something and put water in, it's extremely heavy, and that changes the cost for transportation. I don't know what Coca-Cola is doing about this because I didn't go look it up, but traditionally that's probably why they're looking at bottling things in places like Phoenix, not so much because it's a great water source, but because they want to have regional bottling plants so that they can reduce their transportation costs associated with distribution. Okay, so what about the Koch brothers? Somebody pulled down the Koch brothers sustainability thing and actually said that they weren't planning to like it, but they did. So if a little bit of digging into the news, and you would have found out that the Koch brothers are listed as 13th on the most toxic emissions list of corporations, and they actually have more polluting factories than any of the oil companies, which is something I didn't know. So part of their companies that are toxic are chemical companies, and one of the interesting things about chemical companies is they have a self-regulation mechanism, which has been studied for years and years now, and it turns out that those chemical companies that are self-regulating actually have no less pollution than those who aren't self-regulating, and they in some cases have more. So I guess my message to you is you can't be passive. You can't be passive when you're reading these sustainability reports. You actually have to be critical in your judgment, and you have to say, well, is this totally true? I've heard through the grapevine that, that mining or oil production or whatever is a very, pollution intensified thing. Is this really true? Are they really sustainable? Have they gone to a circular economy? What's going on? And then if your curiosity takes you to one of those questions, to go look it up. And perhaps even if your curiosity doesn't take you there, to Google the company anyway before you make a judgment. All right, that is what I have to say about week 11. I'm going to be diving into week 12 next, and so you'll find something from me in the next day or two on that. And I hope that you all have a great time the rest of the week, and I will see you on the boards.